Hi, so this is the stage 4 video for working with an inner critic pattern. And you can see that looking at the stages up here, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, okay, this should work. So here we're on stage 4, and the first page, so let me just explain. In stage 5, you're going to be choosing a practice situation that is a situation that is likely to come up in the next week or two, or where you know it's going to come up because it's something specific like a meeting with your boss. And it's a situation where normally you get an inner critic attack, and instead you want to practice having the healthy capacity instead of your inner critic, which might be the self-esteem capacity or the ease capacity or pleasure or whatever it is, depending on which inner critic you're working on. In this particular example I'm doing here, it's the general inner critic pattern. So it would be self-esteem. So here in this first page, you're going to choose your practice situation and you type it in here. And not only is this the practice situation for stage 5, but also it's going to be the practice situation that influences what you do in stage 4. So that's why you're choosing it here. And if you ever go back and change this practice situation, don't just, like change spelling error, because anything you change in here will give you entirely new pages in stages 4 and 5. So everything from here on is relative to this practice situation. And if you wanted to, you could actually come back and choose a different practice situation and go through stage 4 and stage 5 again with the new situation. Okay, so here the practice situation that I've already chosen here is when I speak out, which means that this is a situation where when I speak out, I tend to get attacked by my inner critic. I mean, this isn't true for me, but personally, but this is the example I'm using. Okay, so now once you've done that, you go on to the next, and these are actually almost like preliminary stage 4 pages. So the next one is now you fill in a little more information about, first of all, you're going to work through the fears and underlying motivations that drive your inner critic in this practice situation. So in this particular situation, which is when I speak out, by the way, the bully was the name that I chose for the inner critic in this thing. So here it is: when the bully's activated, how do you behave? Or in this case, feel. I feel inadequate. How would you like to behave? I'd like to feel confident and worthwhile. And what is the bully's fear? I'm going to put in, just for the sake of making this simple, I'm going to put in fear of rejection. Because that's the one I'm going to use. Okay, so we're filling in a little information here about this, and then you're going to choose now what you're going to get here. Remember, in stage 2, you got a whole list of the fears and underlying motivations that you chose in stage 1, and each of those led to a different wound to work on. This is similar. You get the list of all the fears and underlying motivations that you chose in stage 1 for this pattern. But these, because this is stage 4, each of these leads to a place where it helps you to work through the fear or other underlying motivation. So I'm going to take this one just as an example. Because remember I said there was the fear of being rejected. So look, here's the one. It wants to get me to perform well so I don't get rejected. So let's say that's one of the underlying motivations for your inner critic attacking you, to get you to perform well, to avoid being rejected. So in order to help your inner critic work through that fear so that it doesn't feel like it has to attack you. By the way, of course, we know this is absurd. If the inner critic attacks you, it's not going to help you to perform well. We understand that, but that's what inner critics do. They do things that often protectors in general do that, things that actually don't work the way they expect. So I'm going to click here. And I'm now working through rejection fear. And that, by the way, this isn't just fear of rejection. It also includes fear of abandonment, fear of not being cared for, or being dismissed. And so we're going to go through a series of steps here to help. And remember the article that I had earlier in this week's module was an article that explained negotiating for self-leadership. This is what we're doing here, or that's what we're going to be doing in this meditation down here. And here we're setting it up. So this just reminds you about what we're doing, it kind of explains it, and then kind of gives a summary of the steps we're going to go through, which is probably worth my doing. So you're going to decide, in order to really negotiate successfully with your inner critic, you have to figure out if its fear is realistic or not in the practice situation you've chosen. You know what? I think instead of summarizing these, I'm just going to go over them. So, because that'll be the summary. So here it is. Here's the next step. So in this case, the inner critic's fear was the fear of being rejected. And the situation is speaking out. So is it realistic to fear that you would be rejected if you speak out in the next couple of weeks? So here it is, and you want to ask, is that likely to happen, or is that not likely to happen? And that will influence how you negotiate with your inner critic in order to get it to relax and not attack you in those situations. So let's see. I'm going to assume that this fear of rejection won't happen. You know, probably most of the people around, if you speak out, they're not going to reject you for speaking out. That's a childhood fear. So if it was realistic, I would feel in something different here. If there was situations where you might speak out and you might get rejected. But just for simplicity, I'm going to assume that. And we'll now go on to the next page. So even if, and actually, I'm doing the simple version of this, but this page actually applies to the situation where the fear is realistic. So maybe I should go back and do this. So let's suppose there's some situation where the fear of being rejected is realistic. Explain why these fears aren't realistic. Let me just put that as because most people won't reject me for speaking out. Okay, but if you have fears that might happen, enter them here. So let's assume that let's say somebody I know, John, might actually dismiss my ideas if I speak them. Okay. So there's a little possibility that this could be realistic fear with John. So now the next page is looking to see, even though, in this case, John might dismiss my ideas, maybe it might be worth my while to take the risk anyway. Maybe I want to speak out even if, maybe it would just be worth it because I would get more assertive, I would feel stronger. So I may decide, you know what, it's worth doing it anyway. And if so, I'll type that in here and I'll use that in my negotiating with the critic. And now here's the other thing. Even if if somebody does dismiss me like John, maybe I could handle the pain anyway. And so here I might say, you know what, even if John dismisses me, it's not the end of the world. I can handle it. And so I'm going to type in some stuff. I won't bother to take your time to type it in now, but here it is. So that's another thing I'll use in negotiating with the critic. And then also I might want to create a plan either to prevent John's dismissal or to protect myself from it. And so here's a way that you can figure out a plan of how you might enter the situation, or how I might decide how I'm going to speak out in a certain way that minimizes the chances that John's going to dismiss my ideas. Or maybe if he does, I'll assert myself with him, or I'll get other people to support me. There's all kinds of different possibilities. So you basically figure out a plan for how, even if the fears happen, here's how you're going to handle it. And if you need additional help with that, there's other pages you can click to get even further help when figuring out your plan, but I'm not going to go into that now. Okay, so now we finally have gotten to the point where you're ready to do the meditation, where you negotiate with your inner critic. Now, this is a critic that you presumably have already gotten to know in stage 1. You did a meditation, hopefully in stage 1, where you've gotten to know that critic and developed a somewhat trusting relationship with it. If you haven't, you should go back to stage 1 and do that meditation. So this is a meditation where you actually go inside, contact the critic again, explain to it the practice situation you've chosen, and how either its fears are unrealistic, you're not going to get rejected if you speak out, or if that could happen, like in the case of John, how you're going to handle it, or how you want to take it on anyway, or how you can handle the pain that might come up. That's all in the meditation. So you go through there, you take any notes here. If you need any additional help, you can click here, and then we go into the last page. Now, this is the end of this round of stage 4. So here's a little interlude. Here's a little homework you can do to help you learn more about this practice situation that's coming up. But this basically, we've now finished the series of steps that have to do with working through the fear of rejection and reassuring the inner critic that it doesn't need to worry about you being rejected, and therefore it doesn't need to judge you in order to try to get you to be more successful and not rejected. So then you go back, and now this is stage 4 continued, because there's more of these. So we work through rejection fear. Now you have a choice here of working, maybe there's some other fears, working through harm fear, working through manipulation fear, working through failure fear. So you can decide if you want to do another round of working throughs or not. And if so, you do that one, and then if not, you go on to stage 5. Now there's other options here besides this, but they don't come up in the regular inner critic pattern. So I'm going to switch over here now to, this is the taskmaster, because this has some other interesting things here. So there's the same kind of working through these various fears, but there's also 2 other things. Let me show you one of them. So this is working through taskmaster opposite extreme. So if you became a taskmaster, that's not right, but if you developed a taskmaster part in reaction to one of your parents being so lazy and incompetent that it bothered you or shamed you, and therefore you developed the taskmaster, which is kind of the opposite of that. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to get a lot done. So here's a way to kind of explore that and remind yourself that you don't have to go to the opposite of your parent to not be like them. If you don't want to be lazy and incompetent, you don't have to become a brutal taskmaster. You don't have to, you can just have a healthy work confidence capacity. So that's what this page is for. Then we go back, Now, the other option that we haven't covered yet is something like this. So suppose the underlying motivation for the taskmaster is I'm fighting against a part of me that procrastinates. So that's not a fear, that's an inner conflict. And so this is a different kind of working through. So this, I'm going to click on this, and we get a short series of steps about working through an inner conflict about procrastination. The other major inner conflict around inner critics is about eating, where you have your food controller. Here's the taskmaster in a conflict with the procrastinator pattern. You also can have your food controller in conflict with your indulger pattern. But let's just, but it's the same, whoops, sorry about bumping the mic. It's the same idea. So this kind of just gives you a summary of what we're going to do. And then in the next step, you want to check to see if the procrastinating problem, the taskmaster is fighting against what it sees as procrastination. But it's possible that you really are procrastinating and you really need to work on that, or it's possible, see, here's the two possibilities. The bully, which is the inner critic, is accurate in its perception of the other part and really is a problematic procrastination part, or the bully's misperceiving that other part. It's not actually a problematic part, so the conflict isn't really necessary. So you choose which of those it is. If it's not really a problematic pattern, you can enter that here, and then you can just click ahead to do a meditation to help the bully relax. But if the other part is really a problem, then what you're going to have to do, since the procrastination is really a problem, we can't expect the inner critic to relax because it's fighting against something that is a real, another part of you that is really a problem, in this case, procrastination. So in that case, let's see. So what do you do here? If it is a problem, you click here. Here we go. So you click here, you get a description of the procrastination pattern. And now what you actually need to do is click here to switch and start exploring the procrastination pattern, because you basically can't really transform your inner critic until you've transformed your procrastination pattern, because that's what it's reacting to. You can just put it on a list to do it in the future, but probably it's good to do it now. So you click here and you'll start working on that pattern. And once you've finished it, then you'll come back and using the status and restart page in your dashboard. Let me show you that. Let's see, let's go over here, go to my dashboard. You can see here's the status and restart page. And so if you've done that and you want to go back to your taskmaster, you'd find it down here. And then you click restart, and that would take you back to that page you were on when you clicked over to do the procrastination pattern. But anyway, I'm going to close this now. And I'll close that, and I'll be back here. So now at this point, you have you've done a lot of work on your procrastination pattern and hopefully made some movement so you're not procrastinating so much. And now, but you still have an inner critic, inner conflict, which is also known as a polarization in IFS, an inner conflict between the taskmaster critic and the procrastinator. And so this is a page where you actually get to do a guided meditation. Now you've already gotten to know both of those parts. In fact, you don't have to work through completely the procrastination in working on that. You just need to at least gotten far enough that you've gotten to know your procrastinator part and developed a trusting relationship with it, which was what happens in stage 1. You can go all the way through if you want, but you could also just do stage 1 and come back here. And so at this point, you'll get to do a guided meditation, which will actually take you through how you work through polarization in IFS, which is you have a dialogue between the two polarized parts, the two parts that are in conflict with each other, and you stay, you're in self, and you have the two parts talking to each other, and you facilitate their conversation to move it toward true dialogue, to get them to learn to cooperate with each other, and ultimately to find a resolution for that inner conflict, in this case between doing a task and avoiding a task. And so that's what this meditation is for. And then you take notes here, and hopefully that resolves that inner conflict. And then here's the interlude at the end of this little stage of steps. There's a little homework here, and you return to the stage 4 thing. And then, of course, here is your same list of things. And if you want to choose another one, you always can. But that pretty much takes us through the major aspects of stage 4 that have to do with inner critic parts. There are a few other aspects of stage 4 that come up in working with other patterns, but they don't come up with inner critics. So when you're finished this, you go next, and here you are in stage 5, but that will be covered in a different video. And so we are finished for now. Okay.